enough for our use, which will be distributed by the distribution companies. At that time, the distribution companies, it is known, and up till now, that they are unable to collect all the money for the power Nigerians need. So the question is, do we generate just a little bit and give a few Nigerians power, leaving everybody else in darkness? Or do we guarantee generation from the GENCOs and give Nigerians the much power needed? So MBT was mandated to give that comfort to generation companies through power purchase agreements and power sale agreements. What that does is the GENCOs have a line of sight to, okay, I'm going to run this power plant for X number of years. My revenue, my income is guaranteed for that period. All I have to do is generate as much as I can, which Nigerians need. So they have that comfort, and they have been generating that power, despite not getting full payment. So we can see that that is a plus. So the GENCOs aren't getting full payments, but they know that because of the guarantee that federal government has put in place, they are comfortable to give Nigerians power, knowing that their outstanding is with federal government, rather than a private company that can go out of market, go out of operation, and that would be an issue recovering their outstandings. So that has provided good comfort. Then the other side of the value chain is the distribution companies. Yes, the power has been generated by the GENCOs through the agreements, the PPAs, that is the fundamental of that transaction with MBT. MBT now sells that power to all the distribution companies in the respective percentages that they've offtaken, and expecting to collect the money. Now, the problem is, let's just ask a very fundamental question. As Nigerians, we all are aware that there are Nigerians that do not pay for power. And like the chairman of ANED said yesterday, electricity should be treated like a product. If you treat it like a social amenity, it's a business. So the GENCOs need the money. And just like my senior from NUPRC stated, it goes back to gas. So the GENCOs have incurred the cost to get this gas to provide the power. And we know Nigerians here, we all know Nigerians who have either bypassed or outrightly don't pay. Or if they're given a bill of, say, 5,000, they say, I can only pay 1,000. Now think of that as a private business. You're running, let's say, just a regular business, bottled water business. You've bought from the warehouse X number of goods, but you've given out to your customers and they don't pay. That business will fail. And we should be surprised that the GENCOs are still producing, because they know the importance of power to the economy. They know the importance of power to the growth of Nigeria. So that MBT has been able to provide the comfort and also get the power to Nigerians, albeit at with a cost of outstanding debt. So the part of MBT's mandate really is to keep the lights on. A joke was said earlier that discos, or initially was PACN, let there be light, and it can't be done. And then later was switched to the discos. Yes, the challenges are very, very germane. A business would not run when it doesn't get its full cost. And going back to gas, like I said, if the GENCOs don't get their full money, it means they can't pay the gas. The gas wells will have to be shut down, which is not possible, but they keep flowing. So these are challenges that are bedeviling the sector, but the guarantee that MBT has brought has kept the lights on. Then just a quick correction, if I may, please, NUPRC. MBT does not pay, so NMDPRA, so sorry. MBT does not pay TCN. We don't. And just a little bit of overview of how the sector works. So when the discos collect the money, there is an escrow account that resides with Meristem, which is under CBN. Why that has been in place is there has been payment facilities given to the discos to ensure that they're able to carry out the operation. That loan, CBN NEMS 1, CBN NEMS 2, that loan was from CBN. So in order to ensure that there is full visibility on how to plug back that loan, there is an escrow system where all discos pay back the loan to CBN through Meristem. So what happens is, at the end of the month, at the end of the period, Meristem, CBN, takes the loan, a first line item, and some other things, then forwards the funds that are relevant, that are for power paid by the DISCO, the remaining, to MBT. MBT now takes that money and then shares it to all the generation companies that have generated power for that period, 1-to-1. And I'll explain. If a GENCO has generated 50% of the entire power invoice that was sent to the DISCO of the invoice, and just like my colleague from NERC said, the commission through the FGN, through the commission, applies some form of tariff shortfall. So what that means is, and it's very important, Nigerians cannot pay the full cost of electricity, the actual cost of the goods they've bought that has been delivered to them. You and I may not be able to pay 200 naira, 206 naira per kilowatt hour. There are vulnerable Nigerians. So what government has done is applied a form of subsidy, more or less, to the sector, and that is applied in a percentage form. So the DISCOs have a cost that they need to pay, but government has provided this subsidy that DISCOs should only pay, or DISCOs should only charge Nigerians a certain percentage, 40%, just a round number. Then the remaining balance, which is 60%, is handled by government, which is, we call it tariff shortfall. Now imagine, government pays that balance, the 1 minus 40%, right? The 40% that is pushed to the DISCOs, it's not paid in full. So that too has a gap. And all these things are what trickle back up to the GENCOs. There's issues with payment and everything. So MBT has continued to play that role. And part of the solutions that we're looking at, and to be honest, MBT was institutionalized as a temporary stopgap. MBT is not meant to be in the market forever. MBT is to be there, manage the relationship between the GENCOs and the DISCOs up until a point where the DISCOs are able to pay 100% of the total cost. So we are ensuring that that is being done. The Commission is making a lot of moves, a lot of directives and orders to ensure that the market closes that gap. As soon as that's done, MAT will step out of its role that it's playing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Another round of applause, please. The Federal Ministry of Water Resources. It's a ministry that's holding a very critical national natural asset, water, that we believe is properly utilized. We go a long way in developing more hydro electricity generating companies, even though maybe mini grids. But we don't know why the ministry could not harness all this resource we have. I will hear from the representative of the ministry, Mr. Potoyimbo Timothy. You are most welcome.
In the earlier presentation, I wouldn't know if I should repeat myself, that the Federal Ministry of Water Resources is not, issue of power generation is not part of our mandate. We come in there as, how do I put it? Is it emergency or whatever? The core mandate of the ministry is to provide potable water for the citizenry, to expand agricultural, opportunities, to improve on the sanitation of the country. Then, of course, flood control. Water supply, flood control, yes, that's the reason for the major reason for the dams, for our dams. However, I believe along the line that the issue of hydropower generation coming to serve it as a kind of savings situation, sort of. Please pardon me if my words are not that accurate. Now, I believe we have started that for a very long time. Many hydropower dams have been constructed. The records are there. if I may just bring the committee to remembrance, Oyo Dam was commissioned by the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, in 1978, before he handed over power to the civilian government. Until tomorrow, this infrastructure was not utilized. You ask me why? I don't know. Probably maybe I was in primary school then. I don't know. However, there are many other hydropower, infrastructure like that were abandoned. So much money, so much funds, government funds were expended on them. You see, this system underwater can serve for a while, for a limited time, after which it will need a complete overhaul. So why? It's just that you leaving your vehicle idle for so long. By the time you come back there, the vehicle is not likely to start again. The battery may have gone, another way around. Be that as it may, I believe my coming here to represent the Honorable Minister today will be more of volunteering a long time of experience in the service after putting in close to 30 years in the service than speaking more of this hydropower issue. I mean, just as I said, the ministry is going out of its way to salvage the nation, which is okay. And I wouldn't know if the Honorable House will want to expand our, our field of operation to cover that legally. That would be fine. Now, for one of the reasons I identify as a civil servant why some of these issues didn't work is because of the lack of goodwill. The goodwill is just not there for this thing to work. Sincerely, I so much appreciate the effort of this committee. I can't imagine if this kind of thing had been on, this kind of discourse had been on. I believe we would not be where we are today. We would have gone further than this. However, it's better, late than never. Thank you once again for that. Now, coming to the issue of this hydropower generation, now we are sincerely working on that, concessioning some of these our dams to private individuals. As I earlier mentioned, dams like Zobe, like Jibia, like Kankpeomi, and a lot of them like that were given to Ministry of Power to concession, and they are making good progress on that. For us in the ministry, of course, we too will go into that. The Kashimbila Hydropower project was successfully, concession, and they are working optimally now, generating so much into the national grid. The Gurara issue too is there. Unfortunately, this project initially, just as I said the other time, was conceived by the former President Olusegun Obasanjo at that time to actually close the gap in water supply issues of the FCT. Thereafter, our engineers discovered in the course of construction that we can generate so much electricity from this project, and the idea came up. We generated 30 megawatts of electricity, which was actually meant to serve the FCT and probably the neighboring adjoining states. Unfortunately, due to lack of goodwill, as I mentioned, this idea was truncated. We were instructed to reroute the transmission line. Of course, that affects our drawings. We have to go back to the drawing board, have to do what they want us to do, and all the rest of that. And the thing was taken to Kaduna State in Kudendo. It stopped there for so long until new initiative came in now to actually concession it to another company. The financial closure is about, I believe, will be completed this week. This is the issue of goodwill I was talking about. It's beyond us. Now, for the Gurara 2, we are working on that. Somebody around that side took the ministry to court on that. And when it comes to legal issues, you can't preempt the court. You have to Any issue before the court of law has to wait until, the needful is done. So these are some of the challenges we are having as a ministry in effectively, helping in the area of this hydropower generation. However, we are doing our best. The drawings are ready. Everything is ready. And we are good to go the moment we are off that track. In addition to what I'm trying to say, other hydropower projects that we have worked upon, today we are reactivating them. Other brownfields that are, other greenfields that, virgin area that we need to work on, we are equally working on them. Of course, the main problem in that is the issue of finance. The issue of hydropower requires a lot of money. As a matter of fact, I appreciate my colleagues that have spoken here all this while. Generating power with gas and all the rest of that. It has its environmental hazard, serious one. One of the clean energy we need in the nation is hydropower. It's very clean. There's no gas toxic, there's no this, there's no that. But it's very, very expensive to produce. As a matter of fact, you can construct a dam for over 5 years and not complete it, especially looking at the timeline, government releases, and all the rest of that. Many of our projects, some of our senior colleagues retired, handed over to us. We soon retire, we hand over to some other one coming up. It cannot work like that. Because every time you lose substantial part of this work, you have to come back again to spend money that ought to have value. And the value is lost. So these are the issues, they are salient issues. And it must be confronted before we can really move forward if we are talking about hydropower generation. Sincerely, I appreciate the effort of the chairman. The chairman insisted. He believed we are running away from, this kind of discourse. That we don't really have anything to say. And truly, we don't really have anything to. But when it comes to the way he insisted on it, of course, the Honourable Minister has no choice than to detail an officer, go and address them, go and tell them the issues at stake. Now, in conclusion, sir, many of these private people that actually want to invest in hydropower generation. They want to, in PPP arrangement. Unfortunately, the bottleneck and the protocol involved, vis-a-vis the legal framework, is so terrible that I work in that area for quite some time. I keep asking my bosses then that, how do we now cross this bridge? You ask somebody to pay 2% of the, he's not sure he's getting the contract. You ask him to pay 2% to the transaction advisor for the advertisement, and if somebody now bring a wrong price, then the minister can then give an offer of forced refusal. Nobody will, in his right senses, will invest his hard-earned money like that. So I want to implore the House to actually critically look at some of these, I won't call it obnoxious, but they are very difficult laws, so that it can encourage private individuals who wants to come in. Because unless we are deceiving ourselves, sincerely, in this country, so many years we try to battle with the issue of fuel, whatever, government, big refinery, this and that. Only a single person came on board and solved that problem once and for all. And we just must look ourselves in the face and, approach such idea. After all, light is light. It doesn't matter who is bringing it. And finally, sir, I want to submit again that the issue of finance cannot be overemphasized. All our concessions, as we rightly address the letter from the Honorable Chairman, they are paid directly into government coffers. The National Water Resources Integrated Committee, the Management Committee that collect the water rate, this money are paid directly into government coffer. So, we always depend on the budget lines for us to do our operations. And you agree with me now, for the past, is it 2024 now? Nothing has been received by the ministry. The contractors are off the site. Substantial part of the work is being lost, especially during this kind of rainy season. There's a wash-off, there's, all sorts of things. So, If we don't look at some of these things, we will still have reason to come back again and start where we are, which I pray it will not happen. Once again, I want to thank the committee, maybe led by the chairman, for the opportunity. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Key points you highlight is the bottlenecks and maybe misplacement, policy misplacement. That's the intention of this gathering, so that we can bring silent issues to the fore with a view of addressing them. There's no how a minister of water that manages our dams, water resource, you understand, said to not be having a role in the power sector generally. We are talking about the power sector. Because hydroelectricity, as you have clearly stated, is the cleanest, the most efficient. Because we have the material at your doorstep. For the gas, apart from the production challenges, that the issue of transportation itself, we may have bottlenecks. So, but for the water, you can be able to create efficient based on the water availability. That you can at least, forecast and have a plan. So this committee will look into the issues we raised with a view to give maybe a clear mandate to the Ministry of Water Resources, or maybe to take away the aspect of dams and transfer it to another, or maybe to create an agency, hydropower development generally. We'll look at it while we open up more conversation with how can be able to achieve a maximum utilization of water resources. If Ethiopia, other smaller African countries, a final report. Thank you so much. Now, quickly, I will recognize a private investor into the generation who has achieved a success. I'd like him to share the secret of that success story he has in the value chain, and that no other will have, and that's Azura Power Generating Company. I'm recognizing Azura because they're a flight. So we recognize him to make his presentation so that he can kind of and he can fly. But I really wanted to first take the Association of Power Generating Companies. So please, sorry for that, because an aggregate of all the generating company take precedence before him. But because of his excuse, we'll take him. So Azura, go ahead.
Private sector participant. When I listen to the regulators, what I hear is that everything is going very well. The question becomes, if they've all done their job the way they've been speaking, how come Nigerians don't have electricity? And that's because I personally believe that there is a big disconnect in terms of what the regulators believe their job is and what has been happening in the sector. There is a big difference between policy making and regulation. I think that water has been modeled for a very long time. Now, let me use Azura as an example. Let's understand, because before we talk about the future, let's look at the past. There was a power sector reform program. And that reform program recognized some things. One of them is the privatization of existing PACN assets, which was done successfully, based on BPE, some people will question that. But all through the time, what Nigerians kept saying or hearing was that there was not enough power for Nigeria. And that is still where we are today. And Nigerian government did a lot of road shows across different parts of the world. I know I attended the one in London, asking investors, what will it take for you to invest in this country, in the power sector? Now, let's understand power sector is a capital-intensive industry. So, if you're building a power plant, you plan for it most often from the day it's in your head to the day you actually break ground. You are talking of at least 5 years in any country. It's not just Nigeria. And then by the time that power gets to the grid, you're talking of about 10 years. So it's something you plan and plan very well. Because once you've built it, the asset is there. If it's not being utilized, you can't just convert it to something else. So for us to be able to, I'll be saying this, and also aligning it with Azura. Nigerian government said, okay, what do we do? Industries and investors identify 3 key issues. We said first, the easiest one for private sector to do is to build generating power plant, because that's within a site. If you acquire the site, you can easily build a power plant there. Now, that was one bottleneck, and Nigeria did not have enough power generating assets then. The second one was the transmission of that power from that place to discos, and finally from discos to homes and collection of money. And all these led to decisions taken then. One was privatization of the generating assets. The second one was concession of TCN, because whenever we talk, we tend to forget that those are the journey we've had in the past. To concession TCN so that they can really invest in the transmission lines. And then the third one was privatization of distribution companies. And let's also query that distribution of distribution companies. They were not privatized based on the amount they were going to pay government. They were privatized based on the losses they were going to reduce. Because we all recognize that the former NEPA or PSC and the losses, in terms of what the money NEPA was collecting and the generating asset was too high. They were privatized based on the promise they made that they were going to invest to reduce those losses from about 50%, some of them to about 10%. So that was it. And that privatization now happened. Mistakes were made. I will identify some of them. For example, TCN. We concessioned TCN, but we concessioned it to Manitoba Hydro, a company of almost 2,000 employees. You concession it to a firm, and the agreement is for them to bring 10 people to manage the asset. Of course, you know that those 10 people will do nothing because it was not proper concession. It was haphazard. I mean, I know that it has to do with negotiation with union and what needed to happen. Then you go to distribution companies. Because of, again, the way it was privatized, almost all the distribution companies, none of them had a foreign investor or an expert to join them. It became a Nigerian affair. So some of them that hadn't run distribution companies before acquired the assets. And now, in the course of that privatization, there was also that thing, how do we ensure that new assets are built out? Investors clearly said, we don't trust Nigerian government. Let's understand it. That's what the investors said. Investors said, we don't trust that because once you build a power plant, that power plant is going to be there for at least 20, 30 years. So investors said, we don't trust Nigerian government that they will make all this, that will fulfill all these promises. So we are not ready to build. Because first of all, discos were just privatized. They were not bankable. So how do we ensure that if we build this power asset and we sell power to the grid, that discos we are going to pay? And that was when a thought came to create an entity called NBET. And the essence was to incentivize building out of generation assets so that, I know that Vision 2020 we were going to have 20,000 megawatts by 2020. That was the plan, that we were going to be building assets that by 2020, there will be 20,000 megawatts of electricity. And that to be able to do that, we are going to put MBET so that discos will not be under pressure to reduce. They will follow the agreement already signed, the objective, which is I'm going to reduce the losses. Some of them said over 5 years. It depends on each of the discos. So MBET was going to cushion the effect. And we raised Euro bond. Let's still remember that. We raised $350 million Euro bond so that MBET can continue paying Gencos so that it will incentivize the market that private investors will continue building out. MBET returned that money without disbursing it. That's a reality. It's a decision that they took. I don't want to go into why did they do that. But MBET, that was supposed to incentivize the market, failed to do their primary job, which was to pay Gencos their full invoice. Based on the money government borrowed from Eurobond and gave to them, MBET refused to do that. And instead became a post office that passing the delinquency you already identified in the disco to the Gencos. Which means that the investor that we are afraid, and that was also when investors were now saying, we don't trust Nigeria. So that's why the World Bank now came in and said, we are going to give partial risk guarantees so that Nigeria will do their job if they don't. And that was how Azura now came about. Azura was, unfortunately, the only one that crossed the whole thing before government changed and all the policies now scattered. We didn't implement the policy. So I needed us to understand the missteps we've taken in the past. And those are the mistakes that continue to happen because everybody keeps asking, how come we are not building out assets? It's on record today that in Nigeria we use more than 40,000 megawatts. But we keep forcing ourselves to regulate the 4,000 on the grid without thinking of the 40,000 megawatts that people use in their homes. Everybody's focused on that 4,000 that is on the grid. Let's understand, a company today is building a 4,000 megawatts power plant captive. Sterling Oil in Kwale. That power is not coming to the grid at all. If a company can do what the whole country has been doing for the past 20 years, that tells us there is a fundamental problem. Now, we've always said it, and I keep saying it. When you are designing a power plant, when you are developing one, it's something, because of the money involved, you cannot build a power plant with anything, a reasonable power plant with anything less than 100 million. You are going to get quite a lot of advisors. And as long as the regulatory environment is not stable, for every tweak that they do, because what happens is that our regulators, I'm not going to say it's one or two to the other. Today you bring one policy. I'm going to go back to my commercial lawyers, to my commercial guys and my lawyers to look at this regulation again and say, how does it fit? And then, by the time and all those things cost money. By the time they are finishing, regulator comes out again with another policy. Bam, that's what has been happening. And Azura is the only one that has been built in terms of grid power. And we finished in 2018. We were expecting that Nigeria will be adding like 1,000 megawatts per annum every year. It has never happened. So if we are going to say, how are we going to reform the process? I'm one of those that, I know that, again, I apologize to the House members because you passed the law. I'm one of those that I was so much against the Electricity Act. I feel that the Electricity Act was frustration of states in pushing for it because Nigeria is too small a market for each state to regulate the power value chain. I believe that states can regulate distribution, but transmission and generation should be regulated centrally because I cannot do another Azura today. No state can take 450 megawatts on its own, maybe except Lagos. So if I want to do another Azura and that power is going to go from one state to the other, I have to be thinking of the laws in those states, and that will hamper the project. So if we are going to go forward, the question that we need to ask, I think one of the panelists said it before, Discos. It's only in the power sector that you run a business where when you sell your product, the cost of goods, normally in every other business, cost of goods is the first thing you make sure you pay because the person that supplies your product, you have to pay him so that he can supply you tomorrow. It is only in the power sector that cost of goods comes last. You sell the product, you take your expenses, put them in the pocket, pay the financing, and then go to the person that supplies you the goods, say, okay, it's only remaining 40%, okay, take it. How do you expect that guy to replace those goods? So there are so many fundamental mistakes. Like in a business, you know that cost of goods will come first. So that's why my shareholders every day will be asking me, what's your revenue? I don't know if any Disco MD goes into the board meeting and the shareholders are asking, hey, how come you are not, what is the increase in revenue I'm expecting? What is this? What is that? What do you need to do to increase revenue? Because unfortunately, we are running the power sector today. It's almost like the regulators they look at it as like they are CEO of an industry and the companies are kind of departments. And that's what has been the fundamental problem. As long as those things keep happening, private sector will not come in. That's the reality. So I will stop there. It's not for me to apportion blame. It's not for me to say this, but we have to go back to the drawing board and say we have to disentangle policy making, which is the responsibility of government, and regulation. Regulator is not for him to be tweaking the rules every day. It's to, when there is a policy, companies must follow that policy. Regulator is simply to ensure that that policy is followed and nothing else. If you go against the policy, they punish you. That's what it should be. Thank you, sir.
A while, I just got interested, and I'm hearing all these things because we ask ourselves too, as policymakers, how come this light issue has become something we cannot resolve? So it's getting clearer now, even though at some point I got lost too. I was telling my colleague, I said, this thing is too complex. We are hearing from Genco, Disco, TC and all, but I'm sure it's getting clearer now. Sir, the investor, my question now, knowing this, because you are right, that it looks like the regulators are doing our jobs for us as the policy makers. So they go back and just tweak all these policies. the way it will be convenient for them, which I think is very wrong. But as investor, what role have you played in working with the policymakers themselves to really sensitize them to see how these issues can be resolved? Because most of these regulators, they are being oversighted by us. So what role have you played in bringing these issues to the forefront, working with us to see that these are the bottlenecks you have been facing? So for us to, if there are policies to be amended, for us to amend those policies and tell the regulators to back off, even though they have their own internal rules and regulations. But as policymakers, we should be able to look at some of those things the way it will not impact the investors negatively. So what role have you played? And going forward, what do you think we can do in the area of legislation to put a stop to all those things? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Actually considered as if he was talking to my mind, that the main issue, the doctor, presented something yesterday from the presidency, collaboration, coordination, and alignment. And that is the issue of policy making that we are lacking. However, I just want to take the private man on the issue of the Electricity Act, which he said he has completely debunked it. Are you aware that it was the act of the Electricity Act that the issue of NISO came in? And NISO, I think the only problem is that it has not, I don't know whether the presidency, NERC, the TCN, has taken note of the fact that the main challenge there is that NISO has not been synchronized with the, what we call WAP. Otherwise, the policy making will have been an easy problem. I agree with you quite okay. But I don't want a situation where you will debunk the whole Electricity Act. It has its own good. That is the issue of NISO that actually came up on that. Now, when it comes to also policy making, the consumer protection yesterday charged we, the consumers. NAREC has a consumer department. Am I right? But what have you been doing in that advocacy something? That is the linkage that we have been having problem. So I will rest here, Mr. Chairman. Maybe when we continue, then I will take other questions.
It's just to appreciate the MD of Azura. He has spoken like a businessman. And this is what is lacking in the whole chain of the onboardment of PHCN. Because it appears we moved from a government business that is put in the hands of another government bureaucracy. Because both the 11 discos and some discos are still operating as if it is still government business. And that is where the problem is. Because, like Azura said, if you're running a business, you have to conceptualize that business from the beginning to the end. And you should do it in such a way that you are not depending on any Father Christmas that will take off your body. So I think the Azura formula or the Azura model should be what maybe this committee at the end of the day should maybe bring Azura to come and share their success story with the other Gencos and also copy to the discos. Because when you're running a business, it should be a business, you should invest. So mine is not a question to Azura, it's just to appreciate them. You see, when we started this process. I was one person that was saying, why is it Azura have sovereign guarantee? Why is it Azura is this? Why is it Azura is that? But as you go into it, you begin to see that those that floated that idea knew what they were doing from beginning. And they tried to make sure that the road to success were well paved. And that is why they are succeeding. So thank you, MD of Azura, for, we hope the other Gencos are listening, and also the
presentation for this panel, but with the shortness of time. And I don't know why I'm so lucky with shortness of time, because yesterday, most people were talking 15, 20 minutes. The moment it was my time, I was cut short within 3 minutes. And I represent 30 generation companies. I am making my complaints, sir. Now today, when it's my turn, it's time for lunch again. Everybody just see my trouble. Anyway, I have submitted my presentation to the Secretariat and the relevant, but I would like to make a few comments within the short time that have been allocated. Thank you, fellow panelists. I listened to everything that was being said. And like I said yesterday, when I spoke yesterday, the MD of Azura was not here, because I had to ask my colleague, was Edu around yesterday? He said no. You can see from what he started, everything I managed to say within the shortness, he mentioned them. Now, honorable members, critical stakeholders who are here, I would want us to ponder on some things. I like us to ponder. Nigeria started generating power first in 1896. If you calculate 1896 to now, it's 130 years. 130 years, and we are, if you divide what we are currently generating, it will give us 30 megawatts per annum. A country of 230 million persons. We are only generating about 30 megawatts. That is not to say that is what the generating companies are willing to generate. BP has a record. At the day of privatization, power generation that was available that day was 3,427 megawatts. If you see my presentation, you will see the slide. There is no time. I would have loved to just talk to only that slide so that Nigerians can see. The presenter, can you just go to that? Just only one slide. The graph or the table on power generation. Just that one. Only that one. If you can get it. Oh, is that what I sent? No. This is not my presentation. Okay, yeah. No, this is not my presentation. Sorry. Maybe I must have sent you the wrong one. Anyway, if you look at it, you see that as at 2020, power generation was already 8,000 megawatts. From the 3,427 at privatization. Power is growing, but there is a bottleneck. And why is there a bottleneck? Like yesterday I mentioned, Embed spoke very sweet. TCS spoke sweeter. Next spoke perfect. So where is the problem? Today, Edu has mentioned it again. So where is the problem? If everything is right, I know honorable members, some of you are already tired. You have a lot to do. This is a political season. And you're seated here. You'll be seated here till Thursday, listening to us ramble. If everything were right, you should be doing something better. Maybe engaging your stakeholders and constituencies. However, you're here because there's something wrong. And the something wrong is very, very critical. We like to hide things by sweeping under carpet, but I don't want to sweep under carpet. So, one, ponder that we have been generating power for 130 years. Another thing I want us to ponder on is the fact that when, was it BP or Embed? Yes, I think it may be one of them speaking. They mentioned that when the money comes into the market, as in whatever the disco decide to remit into the market, there is a table. And on that table, CBN is one of the first to collect money. It interests you to know that that money CBN is collecting is not a money that was loaned to the generating companies. It was a loan that the regulator approved the discourse to take and put the base on the market. The generation companies also take loans. They go to their banks. If you've been reading the news, you hear Egbin has been threatened severally by banks to take them over. Several of the Gencos are receiving one threat or the other from their lenders that they will take them over because they are not able to pay back their loan. However, the loans that are taken by the discos are put on the market payment system. So CBN is deducting money that the discos have collected to